Hey everyone, this is Renier here, and today I bring a game played recently by Laurent Fressinet against Joseph Dorfman in the French Team Championship. Okay, it's a very interesting game. Fressinet, everybody knows, is a top player, and Dorfman is one of the chess legends that are around. He's now mostly dedicated to teaching and writing books, but is still a very strong player. Okay, one of the interesting things about this game is the opening. Fressinet with white pieces chose to play the quiet Italian game. Knight c6, bishop c4, bishop c5, c3, knight f6. But now he played a move that is catching on. Is being played by Jovava and, well, not so many other people, but still I think it's interesting, and it could be useful for a few games. I'd like to draw your attention to this move before immediately attacking the bishop and gaining some space on the queen side. Then in our main game, Dorfman chose to play bishop e7. But okay, we have to look a little bit about what happens if bishop b6. Well, White's idea is to play d3, then after a move like, let's say, d6, White can try a4, for example, gaining more space, forcing Black to do something on the queen side. He can play either a6 or a5. I think the move a5 simply allows White to gain more space, who will play b5, then castle, knight bd2, and eventually d4. Also, the c4 square becomes very important. He can play bishop b3, knight bd2, knight c4, and the bishop on b6 is in trouble. So a6, I chose it as the main line. Then possible continuation is simply castle, knight e7, thematic transfer of the knight to g6. Then rook e1, castle, knight bd2, knight g6, and now d4. It's an interesting position in which White has space advantage, and the most important thing, it looks pretty safe. Bishop e6, bishop f1. Now White is ready to play c4 and have a strong pawns in the center. So after rook e8, h3, c6, bishop b2, queen e7, c4, White is ready to play d5 next. So this forces Black to take on the center, and then after knight takes on d4, White has a pleasant advantage. Square f5, he's transferring the knight from d2 to f3, lots of control in the center, space on the queen side. This is a game played by Leonid Yudasin against Sofia Polgar back in 1996. It's a variation to try, definitely. Okay, let's see some other examples. For example, knight bd2, castle, now knight e7. This is an important game because it's Fressinet playing with the white pieces. Then he went bishop b3, knight g6, knight c4. He played differently than Yudasin. Now he wants to play the knight to c4, and his bishop from c1 traded on e3. After bishop a7, bishop e3, h6, he took on a7 and played knight e3. Still, nothing much is going on, but White has a safe position in which he can start to create a long-term plan based on the rupture d3 d4. Okay, so after bishop e6, rook e1, rook a8, a5, fixing a little bit the pawn structure on the queen side. After queen d7, black never wants to take on b3 because that would leave the f5 square weak. So queen d7, bishop a4, c6, queen c2, defending e4, that's preparing d4 next. Now black had knight g4, which is a good move, preparing f5 himself and trading a couple of knights that release the tension. Perhaps instead of queen c2, white could have tried something else, maybe h3. Of course we have to look at the sacrifice on h3, but queen c2, knight g4, d4, knight takes. This is how the game went, and still after all these trades the position is about equal, even though it ended in a draw. The game is starting from here and white had chances in that game. It's a game by Fressinet with the white pieces against Irwin Elami from Netherlands. So okay, you can see it's an interesting middle game with lots of ideas to try. If black doesn't do this knight e7 thing, if he can delay for one more move, let's say h6, as it has been played by Elianov, then bishop b3, knight e7, knight c4, and this is the main game played by Giovava with the white pieces, who went to win against Elianov in this position. Bishop e3, knight takes on e3, bishop e6. The only difference now that Giovava actually took on e6 and played against the double central pawns, queen b3, queen d7, knight d2, d5, rook d1. This is normal play, I guess. King h8, a5, a common idea, rook d8, and now queen c2 with the plan of knight f3. This was a very interesting game. White went on to win. As you can see, black has strong pawns in the center, but also the weakness on e5 is there, and white can put pressure on it by playing knight f3 and rook f e1. Actually, instead of queen c2, he could have played knight f3, forcing knight c6, and then rook e1. It's not so simple for black, and white might also consider to take on d5 and follow by with c4 and modify the pawn center. Let's not forget about his queenside expansion, that he can play c4 and b5 in the future. Alright, so this is one way to play. If we look back, and instead of immediately a4, we can also play castle, then after knight e7, bishop g5. I don't recommend this move until black has castle already. The problem with this move is that after a move like knight g6, okay, knight h4 is the typical idea, but black can play simply knight takes on h4, bishop takes, and now h6, and since he hasn't castled yet, he's going to play g5 and leave our bishop on g3 out of play. And this is how Dorfman himself played against Stratescu in this same tournament. No, I'm sorry, in this in another tournament this year in French. So now you can see that there is nothing white can do about g5, and knight d2, g5, bishop g3, the bishop is out of play, bishop g4, queen b3, castle. The position is very, very safe for black. King h1, knight h5, h3. Of course, black doesn't want to take on g3, opening the f-file. Instead he goes bishop d7, queen d1, and now knight f4, keeping the game locked, and there isn't much to do really. a5, anticipating knight c4, takes, knight takes, and queen f6, a4, rook c8. Black is doing fine. Okay, but instead we can try to play something like Yang Nan did, who, okay, it was in a game in which black went castling, then a4, if a5, for example, b5, knight e7, and this is what I was talking about, then knight bd2, knight g6, bishop b3, and white is going to play knight c4, and the bishop from b6 doesn't have a comfortable square. If bishop c5 is always exposed to d4, so black had to play c6, then d4. Of course, here we have to consider to take on c6, play and then d4 as well. Bishop g4, bishop b2, d5, and in this position after knight g3, white was better. It didn't work out very well, this d5 idea. Okay, bishop f5, if knight takes on e4, h takes on g4, white keeps the two bishops, especially the bishop on b3 will be very strong, so bishop f5, knight g3 attacking the bishop, but also the e5 pawn is under attack. So after queen c8, knight takes on e5, d takes on e5, knight e4, queen f3, white was winning, absolutely. Knight d2, queen f4 attacking the knight, knight takes on b3, knight takes on f5 threatening, knight e7 check, but also ideas with queen g5. So queen e6, rook d1, bishop c7, and c4, the bishop on b2, defense e5, and it's a healthy extra pawn. Rook d6, queen c4, and queen g5, and here black resigns. A game played by Nan in 1988, so it's an old idea that is coming back, and I see it. I see it's possible to play like this, and especially to have something to variate from the usual Roy Lopez. So, okay, let's go back to the game. In the game, Dorfman played bishop e7, which is a very unusual move in this position. Then after d3, castle, knight bd2, d6. Of course, black can play d5 in one move, but then after bishop b3, nothing really is going on. Black should play something like a6, and white could castle, and then he can take on d5 and put pressure on the e5 pawn. Okay, they can play a3 or bishop b2 and prepare rook e1. The tension here is not necessarily a plus for black. d6 is more solid. Castle, a6, now bishop b3, bishop e6, rook e1, bishop takes on b3. If I were playing black, I always look at moves like queen d7, for example, communicating the rooks, also with ideas of knight d8, take on b3 and transfer the knight from d8 to e6, have some access to f4. This looks pretty much like a good move, although nothing really is going on. After a3, we can say d5, bishop b2, and rook d8, for example, with an equal position. White shouldn't play knight c4 in this position because of b5, then knight e3 and a5. Black gets some counterplay on the a file. Okay, so but Dorfman took on b3, which is okay, and now I think he should have played queen d7. Then after h3, rook f d8, a4, with the idea of knight c4, bishop e3 or bishop b2, and then maybe b5 or even d4. White would be gaining space on the queen side and in the center. Also, it's difficult for black to make a central rupture with the pressure on e5. So he has to play d5 right now if he wants. And now bishop b2. And I think that White's position is better. He can prepare b5, and also he can prepare a capture on d5 and the e5 pawn may be weak. Okay, he has all the options like b5, takes on d5, maybe d4 or c4. It's all it all will be a matter of preparing the right idea. Also, simple maneuvering like knight f1, knight or knight d3 is possible. Dorfman played a5 with the idea of starting some action on the queen side, also trying to force white to fix his structure there, maybe expecting b5, then a4, queen c2. a4 I think is necessary. Knight b8 is possible, but then white could play a4 himself, and the bishop will have a nice square on a3 for the future. Then he can play d4, which will definitely open the game, and white might get a dangerous initiative. So I think a4 is a need to keep the position close. Then after queen c2, knight b8, knight c4, you can see how good the knight looks on c4, and after knight bd7, h3, simple, with the idea of bishop e3, and eventually open the position with d4. I think in this case white chances are better. If black plays c6 at some point, white can just take and play rook b1 or play rook b1 immediately, keeping some pressure on the b file. Okay, but Fressinet played another move. He didn't went for b5. Instead, he chose to play the flexible bishop b2. He keeps the pawn on b4. If black takes on b4, he only opens the c file, and white can't create an attack against the c7 pawn. That would be very annoying. So now b5, logical continuation to the previous move. a3, by defending the pawn on b4, white is preparing to open the center with c4 or d4. Queen d7, communicating the rooks, all very logical plays so far. Rook to c1, getting ready to play c4. Rook b8. This is interesting. Black places the rook on b8, anticipating this rupture on c4 because of the queen on b3. Might get under attack. So white simply gets out of the b file, and still he's thinking about opening the position with c4 or d4. But now the main idea is that he wants to play knight b3. First he must force black to define the situation on the a file, define the tension on these a5 and b4 pawns. So now black went knight d8. Computer suggestion says rook a6, but I think after rook a6, a move like d4, takes on b4, c takes b4, opening the c file. This is the correct capture. Then when black takes on d4, knight b3, white will gain the pawn on d4, and he will have a superb position. The knight on d4, heading to f5, the open c file, the pressure on c7, and the bishop on b2, looking at g7, is very, very good for white. You can see how from a at first sight harmless opening, harmless development, white can get very good position if black doesn't know exactly what to do. Here we can see Dorfman, a very strong player with a long career, and he's already in a, I think his position is not so good. It doesn't have a clear plan and no real counterplay. It's very comfortable for white, who has no risk and can create all these ideas based on c3 or on c4 or d4. So Dorfman played knight d8, thinking about knight e6 and then knight b3. Okay, knight b3. If he takes on b4, if black takes on b4, of course, we already saw what happens. White would take with the c pawn and then follow with d4. So now black had to play a4, which already shows that things are not going very well, closing the side with where the counterplay is supposed to take place. Just look, the rooks on b8, on a8, they don't do anything. They don't do anything now. If instead black tries something active like knight h5, thinking about knight f4 and queen g4, for example, white could simply grab the pawn on a5, and after knight f4 the threat is knight takes on g2. So queen d1, c5, undermining this position, trying to create some active play. Simply g3, knight h3 and king g2 with the idea of c4, and black has no real compensation for the pawn. His position will slowly deteriorate, so it isn't really serious. It's still about after a4, knight b d2. Now black plays rook c8. The rook goes back to harassing the queen on c2, but in this case white is not afraid. White will play c4. The other option is to play d4, but here after he take on d4 and now c6, even though white is better, his position is still complicated to get something solid out of this, because black will play knight e6 and it's not clear what to do. For example, if e5, he just plays knight d5 and then knight e6. Yes, white will have a decent knight on e4, but the bishop on b2 is very passive. Instead, probably white should do something like g3, knight e6 and queen d3, and think about the rupture with d4, d5 rather than e4, e5. But okay, this is not so good as the move played in the game, which is c4. Now after c5, opening the c file, white takes on c5, b takes on c5, rook takes, and now apparently black is gaining counterplay, but now comes a very strong move. That move is d4, attacking the rook on c5. So the next move is forced. It takes on d4, bishop takes, rook c8 is the only move. Other moves like rook h5, this is no place for a rook in this position. Then after bishop takes on f6, bishop takes, and a move like queen d3, white will have a large advantage. The threat is e5, for example, one of them. Also the b5 pawn is under attack. If black takes on c4, after knight takes on c4, d6 is under attack, knight b6 is a threat, e5 is a threat, and the rook on h5 really is completely out of play. So rook c8, and now Freycinet played very strong move, again queen d3, same idea, to force the capture on c4. And I say force because if black plays something like rook b8, keeping the tension, white will simply go rook b1, adding more pressure to b5. Then after b takes on c4, knight takes, rook takes b1, rook takes b1, and black still is under a lot of pressure. Knight b6 is a strong threat, so he has to move queen e6, knight b6, rook b8. Now bishop takes on f6, bishop takes, and knight d5. Queen takes b1, and yes, this position is very difficult to play with black. White's plan could be g3, king g2, knight d2 and knight c4. The weakness on a4 and the very strong knight on d5 make a very sad picture for black. So especially because the bishop on f6 has no targets, has no way to be activated. So after b takes on c4, knight takes, Dorfman played queen b5. Logical idea to try to get out of the knight b6 threat. If instead queen e6, then white would play not knight b6 because of rook takes c1. Then white would play bishop a1, a very strong idea, followed by knight d4 and then knight f5. White's initiative could turn into an attack against the black king. Look, that is not possible to play knight c6 now because of knight b6 attacking both rooks. So queen b5, pinning the knight on c4, and now another break in the center, e5. And this position from here is almost winning. It's almost winning because all of the black pieces are not coordinated very well and very exposed. The idea of knight b6 is always in the air and not clear how black can get out. D takes on e5, only move. Rook takes on e5, and now black made the final mistake. He went bishop c5. The only move was queen d7. Still, after rook e1, black's position is still very bad. For example, let's say rook b8, then rook d1, and after rook b3, queen e2, threatening bishop takes on f6 as well as queen takes on e7. The only move would be knight d5, and now the tactical solution to this position: bishop takes g7, king takes, knight d4, attacking the rook on b3, then rook c3, knight e5, attacking the queen, queen b7, check, king h8, and queen e4. And just look at this, it's absolutely beautiful. The queen, the two knights, and black will lose material, and his position will still be awful. Also the position of the king. So okay, after rook e1, probably the best solution to stop knight b6 would be knight d5. And again, white has the bishop g7 idea. Takes, king takes, rook d1. White is actually threatening to take on d5 because the rook, the bishop on e7 is hanging. So queen b5 is the best. Queen takes, rook takes e4, and rook takes on e7. It's only a pawn to white's advantage, but still, of course, is a clear advantage. I mean, difficult to materialize, but black will suffer for the rest of the game. Okay, so after rook takes on e5, I was saying Dorfman played bishop c5, pinning himself, but hoping for knight e6 on the next move and all his pieces coming out. However, after rook b1, he loses material. Even stronger than rook b1 was queen f5, putting more pressure on the 5th rank, attacking the bishop on c5. Then after knight e6, white could sacrifice on e6, queen takes on e6, king h8, and now take on f6, g takes on f6. Now there are two pawns for the exchange, king g8, check, check, and now knight d4. The queen has no other square than b8, knight e6, threatening to simply take on c5, bishop f8, only move, queen d4 check, king g8, now knight takes on f8, simply wins, because after rook takes, knight b6, attacking the rook on a8, rook a7, knight d7, a fork, but also knight f6, or you can see that the queen has no moves because the rook on a7 is also under attack. So here it's not possible either to play rook d8 because queen g4 and knight takes b8, of course. So he has to give back the exchange, and white is up 2 pawns. And what 2 pawns? Just look at the black king, also a4. There isn't much to say about this position. Queen f5 was very strong possibility for white, but still rook b1 is the first move that you see, and it's a move that wins immediately, because black's best chance is to sacrifice his queen and take on c4. However, after queen b2 there is no real compensation for the queen. White has an advantage. Still is a little bit it will take a few moves to materialize clearly. Dorfman played queen d7 back, keeping the pin on d4, but white eliminates the bishop with the rook. Then when black takes on c5, he plays knight b6, and all of the black pieces are under attack. The queen on d7 and the rook on a8, and also the rook on c5 if the queen leaves the d file. So therefore black resigns. Okay, it's a short game. There isn't really a lot of deep stuff, but I think it's a very interesting game. You can see you should not be put away from this opening because of the equal evaluations in simple positions. You can see how a strong player like Fressinet, who is almost 2700, chose to play this way against Dorfman, a very experienced player who you would not think that you would defeat by playing this simple chess, and here he did it in just 28 moves. That's a real achievement, and you can see that the middle game was highly instructive, how he managed this position with all the pawns, with no trades at all almost, and how the strategic battle was won by white. Here when black played a4, that was the end of it. After knight bd2 is sold down here from here, because white will play c4 and create weakness or open the c file to his advantage. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. I actually did. I really like this opening. I never played bishop c4 myself, but who knows what happens in the future. Any comments, leave it in the forum and I'll be happy to discuss it with you.